Hello, my name is David Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Patterson, and we are the directors of Rewired Consulting.
We would like to welcome you to the Rewired Consultant podcast featuring guests from across the IT industry.
We will be talking to technology leaders from all over New Zealand, providing unique insight and good chat with the people on the front line of innovation and transformation.
This series will give you a great opportunity to hear the stories of the people involved and create the strategy and vision for some of New Zealand's most interesting businesses.
This episode is powered by smartspace.ai, the secure, scalable enterprise AI platform that transforms your AI capabilities without compromising security or control. Generic AI tools expose your data to unnecessary risk. Smartspace.ai deploys securely within your own Azure environment in an hour, accelerating AI adoption. Smartspace.ai simplifies enterprise AI solutions, cutting implementation costs by up to 90%, starting from $400 a month and deploy in minutes. Ready to lead your organization's AI transformation with confidence? Visit smartspace.ai/rewired for a special offer for Rewired Consulting podcast listeners. Smartspace.ai, secure, scalable AI that grows with your ambition.
To episode 16 of the Rewired Consultant podcast with myself, David Ferguson, and my colleague, as always, Sean Patterson. Today, we are joined by Dave Payne. Dave is a leadership practitioner with over 25 years in the workforce, and he spent the last 15 years of those in senior leadership roles. Currently, he serves as a director at Datacom, New Zealand's largest and longest standing technology and professional services provider. But his leadership journey doesn't stop there. Before stepping into the tech sector, Dave was Chief Operating Officer at New Zealand Football, where he played a key role in guiding the operation of the country's largest participation sport. Under his leadership, the game, particularly Futsal, saw exponential growth and deep community engagement. In this episode, we dive into Dave's leadership journey from the early days of his career and what brought him to New Zealand to building national sports programs and now leading innovation in the tech industry. We'll also look ahead to the future of technology in Aotearoa, what's changing, where the opportunities lie, and how AI and emerging tools are shaping the next chapter of productivity and leadership. Welcome to the podcast, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Look, thanks guys for getting me on. It almost felt like an episode "This Is Your Life" there. Hopefully I've got a few more years left in me, right? But
did you like it? Did you like the intro?
Good intro,
good to hear. It was like the big red book as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. So, look, Dave, what we normally do when we get people on the podcast is we do like to tell their whole story, as condense it as much as possible. We like to go back to the start. So, look, it'd be good just to get a bit of an idea of how you started your work history and your early career. If you give us a wee bit of context around there and go from there.
Yeah, look, so originally I was a printer by trade. So I did print, media and communication. So I studied that at the London College of Printing. My father was in the printing trade as well. So I started working. I can say this now because it was illegal. I started working when I was 12, doing weekends and after school actually with my dad. It started off first of all, just packing boxes with flyers and things and stuff that have been printed and helping the guys get that out to distribution. And then slowly, I suppose, by the time I got to about 14, some of the sort of other guys in there, and I got to know them and kind of grew up in the factory. They started showing me how to use a printing machine, which again, you get done for that now if you got caught doing it. I can say it was in the UK, so no one can get done by Austrian. And then slowly, I've always been someone that's very inquisitive in technology. And then it was, these printing presses, and they were starting to become automated then as well. Yeah. So there was more. They were still offset printing presses, but they started putting technology on the front of them so you could actually start automating processes, etc. And I found that fascinating. And then look, by the time I was still at school, and by the time I was 15, I was actually earning some pretty good money on the weekends and after school doing that. And then got to 16, had to make a decision whether, and this is back in the days in the UK, where you could make a decision whether you did 2 years of A levels or you can go off to college or do an apprenticeship. And I did what was called then a modern apprenticeship. So it was sort of best of both worlds. So you went to college in the evenings and you did work in the factory during the day. And that's when I learned the wider skills of the print trade. So I learned about doing marketing and comms as well. So you actually learn photography, communication skills, graphic design. and printing, and then you had to pick after the first year. You pick which one you wanted to land on, and at the time, the print trade was very, very good money, and there was lots of opportunity overseas. And I got the opportunity to work on what was the first digital newspaper printing press in the UK. It might have even been, well, it was in the UK and Germany, because it was split between two companies. And we were printing Desk Bild, which is the German daily newspaper, at the same time in London as it was being printed in Germany. And it was it was such a big thing. This is in 1996, 1997. And we were talking to the printer in Germany at the same time as we were printing there. And we actually had the news station come in, and it was such a big deal. You think now we're having this conversation on text. But then it was talking and actually looking at someone was quite big. And look, that gave me the opportunity to actually travel overseas. So the boss I had then, and this is why I'm passionate about leadership, a guy called Mark Saggs, still, to be honest, even to this day, is one of the best bosses I've had. He saw that I had a glint in my eye and I wanted to learn from that early age. And he actually came up to me when I was 18. I got promoted. By that time I was 18. I was actually running a shift. And he gave me an envelope with £5,000 in it. And this is in 1998, which is a lot of money, right? And he said to me, and he traveled all around Australia and Asia and stuff. And he goes, the best thing you can do, as much as I want to keep you, he goes, I want you to see the world.
That's amazing.
And I hope that when you come back, you'll come back and work for us. And so that was it, right? So amazing guy. And then I got the opportunity to travel. So I spent time in Hong Kong, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Burma, which is now Myanmar, Malaysia, all over the place around Southeast Asia. And I would backpack, and then I would work and find print shops. And again, if you think about it now, and I'll be legally you wouldn't do a lot of that stuff now. I was a young guy, and you could actually just go into a shop, get a job, and you'd work and get paid, and off you do, and you could do the next thing. And because I was working on these state-of-the-art machinery, I could find work really easily. And then I ended up in Australia. So I went to Australia. Then I was doing legitimate working for contracting companies, and by then I was 19. And I got to go originally contracting all around Sydney, again working all the status arts, the top machinery, training people on the machinery as well. Again, a lot of the digital. This is when we start getting digital newspaper presses involved. So it's also going digital, and digital presses in general, commercial ones as well. And then eventually decided to go back to back to the UK. Went back to the old job I had. Couldn't really settle in. Put my best friend at the time, unfortunately, his dad passed away. He was pretty down and low. I wasn't. I wanted to go away traveling again. His mum said, "Can you take him away? He's not in a good space." So we ended up put our backpacks on, did another sort of tour of Southeast Asia and other bits of the world. Ended up in New Zealand. I got back into printing again. I helped run a small business that ended up becoming a medium-sized business, and that's when I met my now wife Sarah Payne, or Sarah Howard at the time, who had a 4 and 6 year old, and naturally I got them into playing football. So I've been playing football from the day I arrived in New Zealand. I started playing football, and I know some of you guys, the Kitty O'Shea's was a famous pub in Wellington. That's where everyone went to watch the Premier League and stuff, and met a couple of guys. I managed to join Brooklyn Northern United football team, and then I've got now 2 children that I'm raising as well, and I got them into local teams, got coaching, did my coaching qualifications, but it just rained constantly. Typical Wellington weather. We had 7 matches cancelled back to back. So I'd played a bit of futsal while I was travelling Southeast Asia. It was very common. You saw it a lot.
And Dave, can you just explain what futsal is for anyone who doesn't know what?
So futsal, so it's an abbreviation for football de salon, which means football in a hall. Yeah, it's in Spanish. And essentially, it's a low bounce ball. Here's my sell. I used to have to sell this as a sales pitch, but what's the benefit of futsal? Well, the ball is a size 4, not a size 5. It's a low bounce ball, and people say it's heavier. It's not actually heavier. It's just the air mass is different. So the way because it's a smaller ball, and actually the way the bladder is pumped up, etc., actually makes it feel heavier. So there's less air mass. So less mass.
Yeah, because I always thought it was heavier. Just that
no, it's not. Right? It feels heavier when it hits you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so. And then because of that, when you're in smaller environments, like five-a-side environments. If you think of traditional indoor football, which is that bouncy tennis ball and everyone's going everywhere and you've got legs flying everywhere, there's no skill development in that, right? So just you're lucky to get off the pitch without being able a broken leg. Whereas futsal, because it is lower bounce and lower movement, it means that the ball's moving slower as well, so you can keep it in play longer, etc. More touches on the ball, more movement off the ball, which again is going to create. Yes, it's going to create a better football player. A lot of pure futsal people, and not I'm one of them, won't like that because actually it is a sport in its own right as well.
Yeah.
But it definitely helps with football development, and that's why you see in the likes of Brazil and Spain and now New Zealand, because you're seeing it here, because we are a leading development nation for futsal now. But kids will grow up playing that before they play football. So if you look at Brazil, they tend to play. They've got there's one called I forget what it's called now. It's jogger something, which is like 3-a-side. Then you've got futsal. Then you've got what they call social, which is 7-a-side, and then they start using a football.
Yeah.
And then it goes up. So that was what essentially then framed the whole of football plan.
Right. Yeah. Because I was just what I find with futsal, because I never played it until I came to New Zealand, and I played a season or two when I first came here. But it's just like you need to be. It gets you to be comfortable with the ball. It makes your first touch need to be quite good, and then everything is like small triangles, because the small compact sort of pitches. You can't just sort of take everyone on from you need to move it fast. So it's really good at getting the fundamentals, and it would be great if it was sort of like more implemented, probably in the UK, because I never seen it in the UK. Did you, Sean? No.
But interestingly, the gentleman that actually had a passion for it in football in New Zealand, John Herdman, who ended up being a coach of Canada and has been over on that side of the world. He's a Geordie from Newcastle. He actually established futsal in the UK.
Right. Okay.
So that's where that connection came. So, and that's essentially how it all kind of formed together. Is that as we kept growing, as we kept having these games cancelled in Wellington, and there was some leagues, there was some small leagues going, small operations in Wellington and across New Zealand at the time. It wasn't formalised. Basically, we got a haul, and if Onslow Junior Football Club, which is what my boy was playing for at the time. If we were cancelled there and we were playing Seaton, we'd get Seaton together as well. We'll split off our two teams into 4, and then run lots of little 10-minute games and make a little tournament. And hire it. So they still got to have that Saturday experience, but we did it through foot.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, that every time this game's got cancelled, we'd do that. We end up with about 100 teams playing, and then we're like, okay, well this wasn't the plan. We spoke to Capital Football. This is when they were starting to socialise the whole of football plan with the whole football community in New Zealand. And at the time, there was 50-something different district federations and it's 500 clubs, and trying to get them to move to small-sided games. So futsal was a perfect option to do that. So Keppel Football got involved. Then New Zealand Football gave me a call and said, look, can you come up to Auckland and take us through what you're doing? That's when I met John Herdman. Another incredible leader I was lucky to work with. And he said, look, take me through what you're doing and where you think it could go. And I gave him a series of thoughts. He showed me the whole of football plan, which is around completely radically changing the game and removing any 11-a-side football for anyone under the age of 13. And everything being what we call teaching games for understanding. So when you've got kids at between 3 to 5 and you're playing what we call them first kicks, or then you had mini football, fun football, and those who've got kids who will know all this stuff. But if you think of when you've got 6 kids on a pitch and you're doing 3-a-side, and you're telling one team, move into space, they start looking up at the sky and going, what, up there? No, they don't get it, right? Because they're not football players at that point, right? They're kids, right? And they're just learning. So we used a theory called teaching games for understanding, which actually came from an academic from Massey University in Palmy, and it's used worldwide now. And that is where you use stories as a way to teach how you play football. And at the time, we were like, that sounds a bit radical. And then we looked into it and thought, actually, and tested, and it worked. So we do games like Sharks and Islands. So you do 3-a-side, but one team has bibs on, one doesn't. One team's the Islanders, one team's the Sharks, and the Islands are hula hoops, or it could be just squares with cones. And every time you pass the ball, you've got to move to the next island. And the way you would do it is you do the island. So you're teaching the kids to play from the back, move up the flanks, and come back in the middle. Right? So which is what you would do in a game of football, right? Avoid the middle and come outside and come back in. So you set your islands up into a movement structure that gets the outcome you want to do, but you're doing it in a way where they understand.
Yeah.
I've got the shark racing after me. Quick, run to the island.
Yeah. Right.
And then and then you start watching that. Then starts. It's amazing because then you watch it actually happening in the game, but you've not really coached it and you've used a technique called guided discovery. So you're setting the scene, providing them with a context they can understand, and then guiding them to the outcome without actually telling them how to get there.
Very good.
Right, and that then sits, and you can remember it. So, and again, all these things like guided discovery, these coaching approaches, they've been so transferable into well, because if you think from a consulting point of view, well, you've got to try and understand what the problem is. But the reality is, when you're working with a customer, they know more about what their problem is than you.
Yeah.
Our job is then to actually take that problem and break it down into manageable small wins to actually then deliver that outcome in a way that that's cost effective, aligns to either regulatory goals or policy goals, looking at all them constraints and challenges that stop you to get to the outcome. It's a very similar. There's so much that's transferable from sport into business.
Yeah. So Dave, did you? So that's the thing. So you said you were running a business in New Zealand. So the futsal thing, you just started out of making a solution for the kids to play football, and then you had an opportunity then to come on board. So they wanted to hire you. Did you walk away from what you were doing?
Walked away what I was doing. Because I was passionate. Look, much to my wife's dismay, because I was earning pretty good money at the time. But it was a pay cut, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a hit, but it, I was probably still, still young enough, and where we actually at that point we just bought our first house. We just about could afford to do something, right? and look, it was something I was always passionate about, and I knew as soon as I saw the whole of football plan and could see how I could put futsal involved with it and actually be part of the whole of football plan as a whole, I knew I could succeed. And people I was working with were, they were an A team. Like these were, uber professionals, a lot of ex Premier League players and stuff like that, as well as coaches and things, people that have come to New Zealand for a good life. A lot of people that have been involved with football development within the English FA, the Welsh FA, people from Spain, etc. It was. I knew I'd be successful, and I knew it would lead to more.
And it's something you're truly like. That's the thing. We all as kids, we all either want to be professional. We all want to be professional footballers when we're kids. Then we realize we're not talented enough to do that. But if you get an opportunity then in your work life to have that opportunity, do something, it must have been really cool. You did. Yeah, I didn't ask you at the start as well, because you're talking about Premier League. Who's your football team?
Arsenal.
Oh, right.
But look, very passionate about Arsenal. And my grandfather Arthur Payne, he actually played for Arsenal before it was. So they just turned to Arsenal. So either Woolwich Arsenal, they just turned. And this is interesting, right? Because he, I think you go to choices and passion. He did the right thing at the time, but he was actually a London bus driver, right? This was just before World War II. I think it was 1938, 37, 38. He was playing, and he had the opportunity to. He was playing they were semi-pro then. The opportunity to go, they were just about to go, semi-professional. The money was, he got more money driving a bus than he would have done playing football. Right? How crazy is that to think that? But he was a very good player. He was a sort of person that could pick. He was very good at cricket as well, and I think did family cricket too. And so he's one of these sort of people that do anything sports-wise, but from very humble background. Champion swimmer, all these sorts of things. So, but he had to make the choice, and he went the other way. He thought, I need to look after the family. So, hopefully, it's ended up well for us now.
Well, obviously, you were at New Zealand football for quite a long time, Dave. So you must have seen it evolve quite a lot, because look, New Zealand is a nation. Obviously, it's known as a rugby predominantly, right? And so when you took over and football was, the game's grown massively. I guess just because of the access to it, right across the world. You mentioned the Premier League, but what was it like? I guess trying to get football not off the ground, but more eyes on football in the role.
Yeah, look, it was certainly when I got involved. So my initial role at New Zealand Football was the Futsal Development Manager and reporting into the Director of Football Development, which was John Herdman. And so I got to basically stand up a whole segment from New Zealand. It was like a startup, basically. It was a startup within New Zealand football. Now, if you look at where we're in at that particular time, you had rugby by far was New Zealand's number one participation sport, and everything was about rugby, right? Whereas you guys will know back where we come from, well, it's a little bit different actually in Ireland and stuff. But if you look at where, particularly in the UK, if you play football in England, you're a rich schoolboy, right? Hopefully, I'm not going to offend anyone on this thing, right? But it certainly wasn't the game I played. I always remember my local football club. If I go off topic, tell me to come back in. But used to have the football club and rugby club were next door to each other. And we used to, if you look over the fence on one car park, you've got, your Jags, your Beamers, your Audis, and in the other car, you've got your banged out, Escort Mexico and, a Golf GTI, with a few hubcaps missing and things like that, right? It was literally, that was the difference between the two sectors of society, right? Whereas in New Zealand, it was actually quite frankly, it was more the other way around, right? Yeah. Rugby was more, and so it was an interesting dynamic, right? Because it was like,
you still there?
Oh, I'm still here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought you lost it.
So yeah, it was an interesting dynamic that coming into football in New Zealand, where you were probably dealing with not only the bigger participation sport, but football's almost seen more as that. That's some of the sort of the richer kids do at school, or it's the secondary sport that they do at school, but everyone plays rugby. So you kind of coming in. My personal experience, I was coming in with a bit of a double whammy because not only was football behind, futsal was like even the football guys like, oh, why are you playing futsal? So you had to try and sort of work out how it all came together. Now, in terms of the launch of the whole of football plan and actually trying to sort of combat that and make everyone realise why it was such a great sport. What we did is we developed a set of products and services. And again, this goes really well into consultant. I've used a lot of this as well, where everything we did was age and stage appropriate, right? So we looked at the player at the heart of everything we did. And I wish I could bring up a presentation. I've still got it around the whole of football plan. But you've got the player at the centre of everything we do. To think of the customer centred, right? Almost the same sort of approach. And then everything we did as a system development was based on where that player was in their journey. And it could be at any point that player comes into the journey. You might start playing football at futsal at 15. You might start playing at 3. You might be playing girls only. You might be playing mixed. You might be at secondary school. You might be at college. All these different. So we develop programs and structures and systems to support each one of them products and services. So, for example, in junior football, you had the primary school program. You would have the Fun Kicks program, Fun Football program, and everything was aligned to these age and stage appropriate stages of development, skill development, so age and skill. But at the same time, you'd have an administration program for running any competitions and skill programs that went around it. You'd have a coaching program, so the coaches were coached for dealing with the appropriate age and skill development that player was at. You'd have the referee program or officiation program around, again, where the skill and the age of the player was at. Mm-hmm. So everything was every part of the system was supporting the player at the centre. And again, at any point they came in. And then the programs we developed, particularly like in futsal, which futsal ended up being like, I would run in front, test it, see if it worked. And quite often in football, a lot of football guys are 100%, and football will come and pick it out and take it, right? Yeah. But we developed, if you look at why futsal grew so much, and I still believe in this now, is that the big challenge we had, and we had a lot of support from a guy called John Hornell, who ran College Sport Wellington. And he was fantastic. And he was a real tough guy to get across the line. But if you showed him a good business proposal and he bought into it, he would go for it and back you 100%. And I explained to him around how futsal could be much easier to play for teenagers in secondary schools. We can get them linked up to the primary schools. You only have to organise 10 players instead of 22, et cetera, et cetera. And at the time, there was a big decline in kids playing sport. So anyway, he said, look, I'll give you a go. We'll give you a bit of Kiwi Sport funding, it was called at the time. So we kind of took that seed funding, I think it was $36,000 we had. That was the first bit of funding we really had outside, for futsal. And at that time then, I had quite a few passionate volunteers that were working with me. One guy called Matt Fejos, who ended up being a director at the academy at Man U. And he basically, I said to him, look, do you want to, I can't pay you much, but you love how passionate you are, about this. Do you want to be my first regional futsal development officer? And then he became the Keppel Futsal Development Officer working with Keppel Football. We funded 50% of the role. Keppel College Sport funded the other 50%, and Keppel Football looks after the administration fees. Then we had people on the ground, right? And his job was to actually then roll out this program we developed, which was linked to NCAA credits, where not only did you get credits for playing, you got credits for learning how to coach, learning how to administer the game, and how to referee the game. And then you got the administration part of the game in terms of setting up leagues. You got credits for setting up leagues, and they set the primary school leagues up. So you had college kids setting up primary school leagues, coaching the primary school teams.
Yeah,
brilliant.
So the parents don't have to run back after work. So all the barriers you've got to participation started getting removed because we're keeping everything within the ecosystem that was available.
Nice.
So it was taking a very different view. Again, the coach has to be an adult.
Yeah.
Coaching sessions have to happen after 3:30. All these things. We had to break down all them barriers and go, right, how do we be successful? Well, we've got to work within the constraints that we've got.
Yeah.
And that's why we developed that program. And look, it's ended up where you've got, if you're looking in futsal with the futsal whites and the futsal ferns, I think I said to you guys the other day, like most of them players can actually coach and they can referee and they could set a league up. You could literally, and they could do it because they've come from that program.
Yeah.
And not only do they do it, they're willing to do it because they've seen that the reason why they're at where they're at now is because they've not been selfish and been about themselves, have been part of a system. Yeah. I think that's the biggest change in why football, if you look at what happened there in futsal, that happened with the whole of football, and that's the biggest the change where people have got a very clear system to operate within and everyone understands the guardrails they're operating within and people then are willing to participate, right? So, yeah.
Building a true community that's going to be self-sufficient going forward as well. That's
100%.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And then obviously the work that you were doing with the futsal stuff then got noticed by the federation as a whole then, and then they brought in a different role, or like was it still looking after futsal and then that on top, or was it completely different?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, well, futsal then became a very established product within the football suite of products. We had beach football, futsal, small-sided games, etc., and obviously the 11-a-side game and girls and women's football as well. And then, what happened next is I ended up getting a head of operations role. So then all of that got to the point where all of them products ended up coming up into the area I was working in. So as people started moving on, so like John ended up off over in Canada and running the women's team first of all, and then the men's team, and being very much involved with the Canadian football development, with the Canadian Football Federation. That did an amazing job. Did basically another whole of football plan over there for Canada. Yeah. I got to come up and rise up the ranks, and then I got to lead futsal, girls and women's football and community football, and then to the point where we had the 7 regional federations with CEOs in each. My job was then to bring them. They didn't directly report to us because they are members of New Zealand football, but you have to use the power of influence to actually get them to buy into everything we're doing as a sport as a whole, and that would roll up into me as well, and I'd then guide and support the regional federations to deliver on the goals of the whole of football plan we'd all agree to as a whole. And then that role kept progressing. I ended up as Chief Operating Officer, so 2IC. For New Zealand football, so then it started getting more into the international side of the game as well as the community games, being involved with high performance programs, very much involved with getting World Cups to New Zealand, so the Under-20 World Cup, and being involved with all the bidding and all the setup for it, and making sure we had the venues aligned and stuff, and then handing off to the FIFA team when they came, and the New Zealand team we had set up. And then same with the Women's World Cup, which was a huge success. I was involved at the very early stages and doing the first original bid for it, and actually getting the seed funding so we could actually go and bid for it, and going over to Zurich to get it across the line, and then bidding for the 2020 FIFA Futsal World Cup, which unfortunately we came second on getting. We didn't quite get that, which was a shame. And that was, and after that, that's when I did start New Zealand football much longer after that. It wasn't the reason I left, but it would have been nice to have had that.
Dave,
and then
do you think, Dave? Sorry, just to jump in. You're talking about bidding and I guess. Do you think that New Zealand and Australia have any chance in the future of potentially hosting a men's FIFA World Cup?
100%.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, if you look at, I don't work within the FIFA or New Zealand football right now, because I can say a few things. So look, the reality is, the way it works in terms of rankings when you host World Cups, right? The FIFA Under-20 Men's World Cup used to be the second most watched, right? And actually, it was in terms of most watched sports events globally, it was like 5th, right? It was something. It was a crazy number, and you were like, "Oh, really?" And you don't realize how many people watch it, right? Now, it used to always be if you get the under 20 men's, you've got a good chance of getting the women's, right? And if you've had the women's, host the women's, that's the next step to hosting the men's.
Okay.
Right. So I'll leave it at that, and you can get it from that. But if you look at the progression where we've gone, then definitely we are set up for that.
Okay.
And we've got the infrastructure for it. I mean, look, when I say we've got the infrastructure for it, the good thing when you do a FIFA World Cup, they invest a lot into your infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right. So they start building up, pitches everywhere, artificials, training grounds, indoor training bit, the whole thing. Right. So it's a huge win for the country.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, I think it will happen at some point. And look, you might even see it happen by because of a global conflict, right? If you're looking at what's happening at the moment globally. There's been times where World Cups might have to be moved. If you look at the situation we're in at the moment, right, that could happen, right? So, not saying the one's coming up, but you just don't know, right? I think we're in a day and age where things can change so quickly. New Zealand and Australia have seen a very safe spots and very competent at organising major events.
Yeah,
we're known for it. And we can pivot very, very quickly. So yeah, look, I think it's a matter of time before it happens, and there's probably conversations happening now.
Because I think that 2026, obviously, I think it's the 2024 has been decided, so 2038 would be the next one that would be open to Australia and New Zealand, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it would be amazing. Look, and like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if the conversations for what they start happening, obviously years and years and years out, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, I think it's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
So then, obviously, look, you had quite a good stint there, and you were just going to sort of lead into the opportunity that came to get into tech, because obviously technology was at the forefront of a lot of stuff you were doing. But then the opportunity with Datacom, how did that come around?
Yeah, again, another controversial one, right? So, look, it came around at the time. You would remember all the FIFA scandals with Sepp Blatter, or something you guys will, because I know you're passionate about football. Not everyone will, but Sepp Blatter was the president of FIFA at the time. And look, FIFA are a huge global body. If you think about the status and the power they've got, they're up there with the UN, right? They have a huge amount of power because football is the global game. And it decisions. There's a lot of decisions that are made at games, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That with politicians and stuff, which are eye opening, right? So obviously I won't go into detail, but if you look at if you look at the situation there that was happening, so at the time I was actually. Because being I was chief operating officer at the time, my CEO Andy Martin was in Zurich. No, actually, it was in America at the time when all this happened, and there was all these. It was when the FBI were investigating Sepp Blatter, etc. Anyway, that everything kicked off. I remember getting called into a meeting. We were on a back then it was a Skype call with the guys with our delegation over in the States, and everything was kicking off, and we weren't. When the elections come up, we were, we're deciding if we would vote for Sepp Blatter again anyway. And obviously this all happened, and there was a lot of politicking going on in the background around, who's backing who? Are you going to back him because all this stuff's going on? And look, we'd partnered with England and Canada and the usual suspects, and Australia, Ireland, Welsh FA. Like we all had, we all worked very closely together behind the scenes anyway. And like we were like, look, there's time for change, and obviously. The way it worked then by not voting for them, they won't say it, but this is what essentially happened, is that all of a sudden our qualification route changed from being the fifth best team in the Asia AFC to the fifth best team in America, and that at the time was Argentina. And so you can imagine our chances of qualification diminished quite drastically, right? Ended up being Peru. I'll talk about that in a minute, but But look, we got $10 million of funding, which is public knowledge, every time you qualify for a World Cup. Majority of that money, some of that money went to the players, not a lot, would agree with that. Most of it actually went into the community game and preparation for the World Cup, but a lot of it, was very much pushed back into the community game, which was really good of the players and New Zealand football to actually recognise that the community was more important. And without that, our whole of football plan would have been tatters. So we had to basically have a commercial model overnight. And I had a friend, Elias Beeler, who was was at Datacom at the time, and he was the goalkeeper for the Futsal Whites. Told him about our predicament, said we need a CRM because we need to now actually become a commercial organisation. Look at all the partners we've got that support us, and all the customers that might want to, or brands that might want to start using us to get their message out and create marketing campaigns and lead campaigns, etc. and basically commercialise our operations and bring in new revenue streams. So I gave them a call and said, I need some help, and they actually implemented the CRM. I would say for free, but in return, we gave them access to our lounges and access to and branding on our live streaming events and things like that.
Yeah.
And actually, they got the opportunity to mingle with customers where they would never usually get to sit with in the VIP boxes of international matches. So then that was, we can sell the boxes, right? So that's kind of what we moved to as a strategy. Is let's see, so we had like Fonterra meeting with Russian government officials at the Confederations Cup. Again, controversial now. I'm not going to name who was there, but controversial now. But they'd never been able to get above like tier 3 meetings. But in that room, you've got the highest of power sitting in the room with you. And again, you can create trade delegations and talks around what's going on. So we managed to start commercializing what we do with our games, but also commercial and selling them and creating leads and opportunities through a CRM doing that. But also actually being able to say to our customers and partners, this is exactly how many people we've got playing in the game in different segments in our CRM, because we can actually pull the data together. And then, if it was like a sanitarium with up and goes, they were targeting the teenage market, and at the time, particularly boys. So we said, right, okay, well, you can have this segment of the market, so it could be the schools program. We had, at the time, with SsangYong was our car sponsor. They were launching all their SUVs and stuff into the market. Well, what does that look like? What type of people are going to buy them, etc. And using all their market data and then looking at our database and then working out how we push that campaign out. And it made a big difference. It opened up a whole revenue stream for it that we didn't really we had, but we weren't maximizing because we couldn't show the value to our partners. But now we could.
Yeah.
So that got me really interested about that. And again, I know I'd use a lot of technology in sport. The reason why New Zealand punched above its weight is we didn't, being so far away, what we were really good at, and our sports analysts were phenomenal. We were really good at using analysis work and using all the latest tech to actually get the best out of our players and really scrutinize oppositions and work out every single weak spot they had. Again, we were pretty leading edge on a lot of tech. And then I got quite passionate about these systems as well, and all the competition management systems we had. And then I got chatting to a couple of the directors at the time of Datacom, who had been seeing what we were doing. And the big problem at Datacom at the time was the big four were really your Deloittes and Accentures, etc. We're doing a lot with Salesforce, which is the product I was using, and they were getting market share. And look, there was an opportunity for me to go and work for them. And it wasn't something I was, immediately I was like, is that something I want to do? I'm not too sure. But Datacom being a proud Kiwi company, and that's something I'm very passionate about. As a New Zealander, I've been in 24 years or 25 years, but I came from a very, pretty humble place in northwest London, and now I've got a lifestyle block, 3 children, and an amazing life, which I just would not have had in the UK. It wouldn't have happened, even if I gotten into a position I'm at now. It still would have been very hard to make happen, and would have been a very different lifestyle as well. So I've always wanted to give back, either in sport or in New Zealand business or government. We've done lots of work with government, and Datacom was 49% owned by a superannuation fund, 51% by the Evandra Group, which is New Zealand's tech startup fund. Every dollar we get goes back into the New Zealand economy. Nice. And I thought, that's no different to a game of football, right? So I'll take Deloitte and Accenture and that, and it'll be, it can be New Zealand 1, US 0, right? So that's kind of how I went about it. So I took on a strategy to try and win market share, grow out a Salesforce practice at Datacom. And look, I always remember, and again, I can say some of these, this is okay to say because he works for us now, but the managing director of Salesforce at the time, a guy called Craig Skinner, I remember going into the meeting, and basically it was me to present, just joined Datacom, why they should support us as a partner, what we're going to do, and I presented our strategy. And then I remember someone on the call goes, but you've got all these other products like Dynamics 365 CRM and all these other ones that compete against us. Why should we trust you? And I said, well, if you don't, I'll just go up against you with them products. And that's the reality, is that when you've got such a big brand like Datacom, and actually everything we do for the right reasons. Right. And everyone that works here is passionate about New Zealand and actually serving our customers and our economy. So to me, that was a great way to go. Well, you're either with us or you're not. You got to treat Kiwi companies with respect. Just because you're a big global brand doesn't mean you don't warrant us with respect. And look, we got a great respect, healthy relationship with them, and that grew out. And then look, that just kept growing from there, right? So then I grew that business, and then I was asked to come down to Wellington. I was done a lot of work during COVID. We did a lot of government work during COVID with a lot of the systems that were introduced, and just trying to keep the country running remotely was a Datacom had a massive involvement with that. And professional services in Wellington, we only really had a small unit down here at the time. They were doing a great job, but wanted to grow it out. So I was asked by one of the directors to come down and grow out the professional services arm in Wellington, set up really good governance processes and operation processes as well, so we could deliver big programs of work. And came down and did that for a number of years across a number of business platforms. So Pega, Salesforce, Dynamics, etc. All the big ones, and SAP, Workday, and then as a lot of these platforms started growing, I got the opportunity then to set up a service line called Core Platforms to go Australia, New Zealand wide with some of the platforms that we were seeing really scale. So that's when we signed the partnership with ServiceNow, and then Workday, and then basically grow them out across Australia and New Zealand. They've been very successful. So we had a huge year across both them two platforms last year in New Zealand, and now we've expanded out into Australia. And now I have 4 other platforms I work with: Pega, Appian, Nintex, and SAP as well. Yeah.
It sounds like Datacom really sort of give you the opportunity, because it sounds like you're quite entrepreneurial in the way you approach things. Obviously with what you did with NZ Football and Futsal, and then obviously with Datacom, because the reason obviously we know each other is we crossed paths when we were with Datacom 4 or 5 years ago. But I always seen that Datacom's quite a large beast, and obviously New Zealand does that, but it's got lots of small, I would say, nearly businesses within the beast as well, which all sort of come together. But I remember Salesforce was going pretty well when I was there with you, and then I just seeing you grow over the last few, and it's like there's more and more stuff going towards you. So it's like you like to take on a challenge and scale it, which is really, really inspiring to see.
Yeah, look, that's something that's every time I say, I'm not going to do another one, because it is a lot of work, right? When you're growing something, and it becomes personal, right? I mean, I think people say, you've got to keep work and personal life separate. I kind of dismiss that, right? Because I think life's just life, right?
Yeah.
So, and the two that you can't have the two are going to end up coming together, right? So you've got to learn how to work with the two as one, right? And that's not saying I ignore my family, because that's more important to me than anything, right? But you've got to see it. How does it all shape and come together? And often my daughter's in here working with me and stuff as well. We're doing the schoolwork and stuff. But look, it is. I'm very passionate about growing things, right? I'm very passionate about growing things for New Zealand. And so, really, if you look at what Datacom does, we are a bit of an incubator. It's almost like a giant ice house where, if you've got a customer that needs something and we don't do it, we quite often go, right, well, let's start doing it, right? Whereas a lot of partners not in our swim lane, we grow because we're there to make sure that we can deliver what our customers need end to end, right? Not just one platform, not just one thing. Like, how do we actually create that entire end to end outcome for them? That's something we're really focused on. So we've got around 180 different essentially businesses, right? That we have here. Now we've just had a restructure to make it we're called Beyond, to try and make that simpler for our customers. So we've got it into four key service or lines of business now, 5 if you include Australia, that kind of sits across the top as well. But that's to make it easier for the customer, but still one of the things we offer all them services still across our business. And they are like startups. Every time one comes up, you set up a ServiceNow practice. Away you go, hair on fire at the start. You're sitting there on your own. You go, right, okay, I'm going to need the practice manager. I'm going to need someone that can actually understands the solution and can talk, but is not too Debbie that can't talk to a customer. So you work out what are the chess pieces you need at the start, and then how do you create the whole army, and you slowly scale up and run with it. And it's something I'm very passionate about doing, and I've done a number of times now at Datacom, and it's something Datacom encourages as well. I think that's some of the secret to its success. Yeah.
Nice. Well, obviously working for Datacom for the number of years you have, and the different businesses, government, everything like that. Dave, what do you see and working across all these different platforms as well. I mean, what's your thoughts for the future, or any predictions or anything that any trends that you're seeing in technology? We did. I remember we did actually speak about AI a couple of weeks back.
Yeah. I've probably got an even stronger opinion now. Like, I think was that before I went to. I think that's before I went to the American.
I think it was. Yeah.
I mean, look. I'll give an example, right? I'll give an example of ServiceNow, right? And then you can think about how all these big platforms are going, right? And then, that will flow into agents and everything everyone's talking about, right? So if you look at some of these larger platforms and what we're trying to do with AI, which is essentially create like a digital labor force, right? That can support a human labor force. And then how do we all collectively, doesn't mean we need humans to stay behind. How do we all move faster together, right? How do we deliver more outcomes for the betterment of society together? That's essentially what we should be doing. I know some people won't do that, but that's what we should be using it for. And if you look at what they're doing, so if you look at ServiceNow, I've got well over 30 different, it's probably over 40 different types of workflows. So you've got IT service management, IT operations management, you've got all the traditional ones, but then you've got governance, risk and compliance, customer service management, field service management, hardware and asset management. You've got so many different things to do, supply chain now, HR service delivery, it goes on and on, right? Now, if you want a connected AI platform where you can actually have agents and humans working together with fully integrated across everything and create a complete connected ecosystem, if you've got, as you purchase a platform, you purchase it by workflow or by SKU, you can't get that connected thing until you've got every SKU, right? Yeah. So now you could sit there and you might be sitting there as one of these big players and go, well, that's great because they're going to go, right, I want all the SKUs right now. But then people can't afford that, right? Because then you're paying for a whole thing and then you've got to go, okay, what's the change management requirement for HR? What's the change? You've got all the business side of the work to do as well, right? To get everyone ready for it. Whereas if you look at what they're doing now is that they've actually broken it down in 3 areas. So you've got core business services, right? Everything that supports an employee to deliver and to be able to work. So legal service delivery, contract management, HR service delivery, even what Datacom we're doing at the moment, we're going to be integrating our payroll system into it. So payroll, etc. Everything that is there to either support an employee to do their job or support them, like field service management as an example, to support them to then support the customer. They've then got CRM, customer relationship management. So the big launch for ServiceNow is CRM. Yep. It's not just a push to take out Salesforce. It very much is how do we actually get all the workflows that support a customer ecosystem into one place. So CSM, you've got customer service management there, source to pay, field service management, and everything that sits around service management and relationship management sitting in one area. And then you've got IT, so your traditional, ITSM, IT operation. So 3 areas now, and it all sits on one AI platform and on one code line because ServiceNow sits in its own cloud, right? So that's why they're ahead.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? Well, if you think of it at the moment, that fundamentally breaks the SaaS model.
Yeah.
Right? Because all of a sudden, the way I'm going to consume is by having a platform as a whole.
That can do it all. Right? Yeah, exactly.
So I think the shift is going to go from SaaS back to PaaS, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And again, call it as you want. I know everyone don't go making massive investments, everyone or anything right now, but I think that if you think of the way it's going to, you can see the way it's happening. And like if you're looking at AI, an AI starter pack for ServiceNow is based on consumption, essentially the number of assists you call to an agent. You can see where it's heading, right? Because we're going to be using these agents as our integration workflow. And they literally work where, you write a position description for the agent. So I'm an agent that, I'm a field service agent that specializes in laying gas pipes, right? So, and then what knowledge articles do they need to fill up their large language model to understand how they perform their job? You align them to it as well. And then they become that agent that basically just keeps getting that knowledge base is growing. They're learning more and more, speaking to other agents and getting all the information, how they integrate. All of a sudden gas is doing a lot of work with electricity because there's a connection between the two. They start learning off each other. And you basically build these agents out that are going to support you to deliver these outcomes across the platform. The interesting thing beyond that, and I know I said this to you guys the other day, is that you think of it, if it's going to disrupt your world, right? How does that disrupt recruitment? Well, do you train AIs and sell them? I don't know. AI agents. So it's going to disrupt everything, right? Because we're moving to a world where the IP is still very much on us as consultants, how we can actually deploy faster and shift to the right. Give us your strategy, your 12-month roadmap. I'll deliver it for you in 4.
Yeah.
You know, how do we get further ahead where we can deliver value quicker to the customer? But at the same time, the IP that we're building with these agents, it's going to be less us selling platforms and more actually us being able to go, we have the agents to deliver that for you alongside this. So it's a shift. It is a very big shift. And it's not as scary as everyone thinks, right? Because there's a whole view that it's are they going to take over, etc. You still need to have someone that is smart that can go in and understand a customer problem, right? To then deploy something to solve the problem. It's still about, here's the problem statement, here's the solution statement. Someone still needs to do the solution, right? Because we're going to be using more AI agents to support the humans to do the solution, which means, if I was sitting on the call as someone that works in these platforms at the moment, if you're a technical consultant now, start shifting to becoming a business process consultant.
That's what I was going to say. Is that like what's it like? Just coming on to that, the advice, because it is going to change drastically over the next few years in terms of what type of roles there are in the workforce and stuff like that. And there'll be people who'll be blissfully unaware and just thinking that nothing's going to change. And there'll be people who's actually really shit scared as well. So like if you were to give, and obviously like you've run huge teams as well, like, but what sort of advice would you be giving to people who's like thinking about what should I be doing? What sort of like maybe courses should I be doing, types of experience I should be getting to make sure that I'm actually going to be very valuable to this next workforce that's going to be coming?
Yeah, look, I think that all the soft skills, right, as they call it, because they're still important. They're very important skills, right? So I think the skills of being able to actually problem solve, they still become really relevant. And this sounds like because everyone's saying the same things at the moment, but it's true, right? You need to be able to talk like this, have a conversation, and be able to actually unpack a problem. Be able to not just hear what someone's saying when they've got a problem, actually be able to feel it and get connected and go, right, actually, these are the big pain points, because when they're talking about this bit, their voice is raising. When they're talking about this bit, they don't seem bothered, right? Actually that connection to actually understand what are the real problems, to make sure that what we do deploy in technology actually delivers value, right? Because you could still go in there and go, oh, I think it looks like this, deploy everything and go, well, it's not what I wanted, right? Now, you might be able to do remediation work a lot quicker now, but you're still going to lose a relationship. So in terms of the skills that are required, is that, it is really important that you do, like leadership programs, business studies is going to become even more important. If you're studying stuff, just understanding how businesses operate and how they need to meet market demand. Government agencies, understanding what it is they're doing to try and serve and why, and looking at each agency and what they do, be it health or, be it health, aviation, whatever it might be, like just deeply understand what these things do and actually specialize. So actually, I think there's probably two things. You've got the generalist skills that require the soft skills of being able to communicate, understand problems and solve. But actually, people are going to become probably more specialized, right? Because in a certain field, because they're going to be needed to then take their digital workforce to come with them. And we're all going to go further right, shift further right, and deliver problems, solve problems quicker. And if we do it like that, that's great for everyone. But I think there's going to be a period of absolute disruption where people, like you're saying, won't move forward, will stand still and go behind. And that's the place you don't want to be, right? So there's no simple solution, but you got to start navigating and finding your way and testing and
Do you think that's the thing? Like, if you're looking at like positions within like the tech industry, like, do you think there's ones that you could see basically becoming obsolete with what's coming with AI? Like, is there any which is it more danger than others, or?
I'm not going to go too much into that, right? Obviously, it's the role I have now, right? But look, there's definitely if you look at what you can do with AI now in terms of development, if you look at what you can do now in terms of writing solution design documents, you think about all that upfront service design work and BA type work that you would do. If you're looking at these user story templates that sit within the platforms now, where you can start creating user stories and then they can populate workflow. That's where I'm saying you've got to think of the shift to the right. In fact, if you look at a BA, if a BA can create user stories, they can now create them directly into a platform and spit out workflow. What does that mean? So look, everything's going to shift, and it's going to be based on a platform by platform and sometimes standalone AI technology. But the best thing you can do is play with it. Right? And then you'll start to understand where the change is going to be and where you fit. So my advice to everyone at the moment with this change is don't be overwhelmed with it. Get stuck into it, and you're going to get things wrong, etc. But the best thing you can do is just keep moving, right?
Experience with it.
and get some experience with it. Yeah, and just go. And it's clunky at first, and it doesn't. But if you ever try to use Copilot with Excel, like I was so excited when I got Copilot and thinking, oh, great because spreadsheets and you're trying to all these formulas, and it all it does is I want to do this, and it brings up the help bar. So, look, it's still got a long way to go in some areas as well, right? But I think the main thing you should be doing is that if you've got access to AI tooling,
get on it.
Use it. If you're working with a company that's got ServiceNow, Salesforce licensing, and you can use the partner portal, and you can do micro certs. You've got a lot of them have got free ServiceNow universities and Workday. You can do a lot of that stuff for free now as well and learn.
Yeah.
Just start learning, start playing with it, and then that will naturally you'll start seeing where you fit and the gap you've got to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dave. No worries. Well, look, that was really good. Really interesting to hear about obviously your backstory, how you started out your career. The New Zealand football thing, obviously, we're very interested in because we're massive football fans.
Yeah.
It's great to see that it's still growing, and New Zealand have qualified for a World Cup as well, which is great. And just the technology side of things, I say, look, it's an interesting time, and over the next few years, things are only going to get. And being at Datacom, you're really at the forefront of that as well. So I really appreciate your insights on it. So thanks very much for coming on doing the podcast. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time, guys. Brilliant.
Good stuff. And look, to our listeners and our viewers, if you continue to like the content we're putting out there, please subscribe on the YouTube channel and give us a like or a follow on any of the audio platforms as well. Until the next time, thanks very much. Cheers again, Dave. We'll see you for the next episode.
Cheers.